Welcome to this episode of CEO Perspectives, a signature series by the Conference Board. CEO Perspectives are conversations that take an objective, nonpartisan look at a range of subjects that matter most to business leaders. I'm Steve Odland, the CEO of the Conference Board and the host of this podcast series. And in today's conversation, we're going to be discussing the generations and specifically millennials. What makes this generation unique? In what ways are millennials like other generations and how are they different? And what are their views of other generations?
You are listening to CEO Perspectives, a podcast by the Conference Board.
Joining me today is Alex Keaton, the assistant producer of digital media here at the Conference Board and a member of the millennial generation. Alex, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
Okay, Alex, so here we go. Tell us a little bit about your life as a millennial and your career so far.
Well, first, I have to mention that in case anyone is wondering, I am old enough to know the Alex Keaton reference. I just had to put that out there. So I was born and raised in Philly by two wonderful parents. I have a younger sister who is actually Gen Z. Thinking about my childhood, I have some really great memories. I didn't grow up watching TV all the time. We weren't on computers. We weren't on tablets. I don't even think they had tablets back then when I was younger. What I did do was visit my grandma every Sunday. My sister and I played outside all the time. We did arts and crafts. We read books. We did puzzles. There was lots of activities going on. We had these neighbors that I grew up with who would knock on our door and ask us to come outside and play all the time. We had a band with them, so we would sing and play our plastic instruments. And my parents had those VHS cameras, those really big VHS cameras, and they would record everything that we did.
That is just so annoying because, then now they're going to torture you when you have children and they're going to play it for them.
They torture us now and play them. So, yes.
So let me get this straight. So the millennial generation is sort of viewed as the generation who grew up with technology. You don't talk to people, you text and so forth. But it sounds like you had a sort of more traditional kind of upbringing with puzzles and, little less on the electronic side.
Yeah, I kind of feel like we were the last generation to do that. I feel like the younger generations now are all about technology. I'm on the train and I see little kids just with their faces and tablets. My childhood experience wasn't like that. We were outside playing and it was very different. We went to the park and rode bikes and went sledding, and roller skating was like one of my favorite activities that I did with my dad growing up. My mom, on the other hand, she did not like the sports kind of thing. So, she was there in the background cheering us on with her disposable camera.
A disposable camera. You sound like a baby boomer. Are you sure you're a millennial?
Well, I said my mom had a disposable camera.
Okay. All right.
She's the baby boomer.
All right. Okay. All right. I just wanted to get this straight here. All right. So, these millennials, have been the source of conversation for a long time. The millennials are the generation that it was actually Gen Y, and then they started calling them the millennials, but they kind of fit in there between, Generation X and Generation Z. But millennials are those with birth dates between 1981 and 1986 generally. So it's a 15-year period. Just talk to me about what you think are the characteristics of the millennial generation.
If I were to describe millennials, I would say we are very tech savvy, very entrepreneurial. We're not afraid to take risks. We are passionate about anything we put our minds to. And I think in terms of a work environment, especially for me, what's valuable is having a seat at the table. We want to be included in those important conversations, as well as a work-life balance. It's important to be able to make time for the people and other activities that are important to us. I love collaboration. And what I found, amongst me and my other millennial friends is that we like to keep learning. So even after graduation, we're learning to grow in our careers, and we value ongoing education and professional development. Growing up with social media, we're also, when we want to learn something new, we go straight to the internet. So we're using like platforms like YouTube and online courses to develop our skills and even, learn about things that just interest us in general.
Yeah, and you rely a lot on your phones, don't you? I mean, you're not really using computers a lot. It's, you're on the go and so forth. I've watched.
Right.
Yeah. But, that's different than previous generations, but just an overview of the generations, we started talking about this whole concept of generations, even though human beings have been around for a million years. But the first generation that we talk about is the greatest generation, 1901 to 1927, and the silent generation, 28 to 45, boomers from 46 to 64, X from 65 to 80, the millennials, 81 to 86, and then Gen Z from 97 to 12. And the babies being born today are generation alpha. But you're sitting here sort of towards the younger side of this group of generations. How do you think of, when you think of the greatest, they name themselves the greatest generation, the silent generation, the boomers, do you see distinctions for each of those generations, or does it kind of all run together for you?
There's definitely some distinctions. I mean, there's even distinctions between older millennials and younger millennials. Since there's a distinction between just one generation, I think, of course, there's some between all of them. For older millennials, I would say the main difference from what I see is social media. And I think it's more about the way we experience social media. So for older millennials, I would say they don't quite understand the pressure or the consequences of what a social media post can do, and how much power that can hold. When I was growing up, I was taught to be aware of each and everything I post to the internet because it's there forever. And that was kind of a scary thought. So I think for a lot of younger millennials and also Gen Z, they're more aware of that than older millennials are.
Yeah, and so, but go to the generations before that. So, the silent generation, boomers, the greatest, how do you look at those generations?
So for boomers, I think it's easier to distinguish the differences because my parents are baby boomers. But, in my experience viewing my parents, one of the differences I've noticed is that millennials take more non-traditional career paths. So whether that's like launching a business or freelancing or juggling more than one interest at a time, I think millennials are finding ways to incorporate those things into our lives and making we want to make more of an impact on ourselves and the world, and we just want to do things that makes us happy and excites us. I think for baby boomers, they were more traditional when it came to their career and their lives. They looked for a good company to work at. They stayed there for 30 to 40 years or more. They were loyal to that company until retirement. Boomers are very tunnel vision. So, they went to work, they got a pension, they bought a house young. My mom bought her house when she was 29 years old. That's 1 year older than I am right now, and I am not ready to buy a house at this point.
Well, you live in New York City, so that,
Exactly.
you got to give yourself a break. That's a little different than,
It is different, yeah.
yeah. Well, so your parents were boomers. Your grandparents were silent generation?
Yeah, so my grandmother, who I'm the closest with, she is from the silent generation, yes.
And do you see a distinct difference in that generation?
I do. I mean, her memory is great. She tells me a lot about, the way she grew up, and I'm kind of comparing that to, what it's like now. We definitely have more freedom when it comes to the choices that we make in terms of our career, and just what we want to do in life. She didn't really have many choices like that. She also had a lot of good experiences growing up. I mean, she was in a band. She told me about times where she had to walk to school in the cold and take the bus.
Yeah, but it was uphill both ways, and the wind was blowing, and it snowed all year round.
Exactly.
You have to be careful about some of these stories, Alex.
I know.
But, you'll be telling your kids and grandchildren these stories, same ones at some point. So, it is interesting, though. The millennials are now into their 30s, and the oldest millennial now is hitting 40 years old. How did, so now switch it to the other way. How did the millennials, Gen Y, view the the younger generation, Gen Z and thereafter?
Well, I feel like because I'm on the younger side of the millennials, I can kind of relate to Gen Z a little more because we're closer within that time frame. And like I mentioned, my sister is a Generation Z. So, we grew up interested in a lot of the same things, which I think is really nice. And we're both in the arts. So it's really nice for us to talk and brainstorm and talk about our interests and what we want to do in the future. So I think in terms of that, it's we're very relatable.
Yeah, so it is interesting because as a later millennial, you probably are more similar to an early Z, because these things are just generalizations, aren't
Mhm.
they?
Yeah, they are.
We've discussed the characteristics of millennials in general. Next, we'll explore how they view other generations. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back.
What does the future of work mean for your employees? How will your company navigate ESG? Will there be a global recession? At the Conference Board, our experts translate the latest research and economic analysis into insights and real-time problem solving for your organization. Membership at the Conference Board provides your team with an assortment of knowledge from economics, marketing and communications, ESG, public policy, and human capital. As a member, you'll have access to our center experts, member-exclusive events, data and benchmarking tools, and peer sharing that will help you understand the present and shape the future. Consider becoming a Conference Board member today by visiting www.conference-board.org.
Welcome back to CEO Perspectives. I'm your host, Steve Odland, the CEO of the Conference Board, and I'm joined today by Alex Keaton, the assistant producer of digital media here at the Conference Board. So, one of the things that I've read recently is that millennials in the workplace are very frustrated. Millennial managers are very frustrated by these young whippersnappers. Do you see that in your career?
Yeah, I think it might be a little challenging because Gen Z is they like to jump right into things. They're very tech savvy. They know how to do things. They want to get involved right away. I think it could be overwhelming for some of the older generations to take in.
Yeah. So is it, they're a little less patient, you think?
Yeah, I would say Gen Z might be a little less patient.
Yeah. Well, the reason I'm pushing you on this is when you talk to generations, their view typically of any generation younger than them is the same thing. So, one of the questions here, as we go through these discussions is, are there really differences between the generations? I mean, there are probably some, or is it life stage driven? When each generation is in this stage of their life, there are more similarities, and I don't know if you have a view on that.
I think they're different because, like I mentioned, with the baby boomers versus millennials, when baby boomers were the age I am now, I think, like I said, they were very tunnel vision. They're looking for a job that they could stay at so that they can be financially stable and they can have a family and get married. And with the younger generations now at this age, our mindset is very different. We don't have the same goals that the other generations did at that time.
Yeah, I think we hear that from the other generations. We didn't really have a choice. There was an expectation that this was supposed to happen. You were supposed to get out of school, get married, have kids. Sounds like you're saying that the millennials have a little more freedom, or feel like they do anyway.
Yeah, I think millennials are very free thinking when it comes to their career and their life. They're more open to the possibilities of things that they can do. And I like that, though. I like that we don't have to be, one direction, and we're open and free to change our minds if we want to do something.
Yeah, the other thing that millennials are characterized as is job hoppers. That they stay for a couple of years and then they try to get another experience. Do you sense that is a legitimate characteristic?
I think so. Millennials and Gen Z, we're looking for companies that are going to listen to us, that are open to our ideas, that have a great work-life balance, that have collaboration. We want a company whose values that we appreciate. And so if we don't see that at a company, or if we're unhappy, and we kind of feel like it's a toxic work environment, then I think that, millennials and Gen Z are more open to switching jobs.
Yeah, I mean, we hear from the silent generation and the boomers that, they like, as you said, they expected to go to one company, stay for a long time, and so their experiences were collected within that organization.
Mm-hmm.
I think what you're saying is not only do millennials seek out certain characteristics, but but they collect experiences by moving from job to job. Yeah.
Every opportunity you get to work somewhere is a learning experience. And so whether they take that as a positive experience or a negative experience, that's something they're going to remember. But I think it's good if they find something within a company that they like. If they know what they're looking for a positive work experience, they're going to continuously look for that down the road in the future.
So, it's interesting. You use the term work-life balance, which of course the conference board has written a lot on.
Yes.
When you use that term, what do you mean by it?
Being able to make time for the people and our outside activities that are important to us.
So does that mean that you're willing to work fewer hours?
Well, I think everyone would be willing to work fewer hours, but not that we're looking for a company that's, you only work 20 hours a week. That doesn't make sense. But maybe a company that is more flexible.
And what does flexibility look like? Well, does it means allowing you to work when you want to work? Is that what you mean by it?
Flexibility, I think, in today's society, especially with COVID and everything happening, is maybe half working from home, half working in the office. I think that's like the
Okay.
main flexibility that we are looking for right now.
Okay. That's interesting because some people define flexibility as, hey, if I want to get up at 6 and work for a couple hours and then take a break for a couple hours and I want to work late at night, or if I want to spread it out over the weekend, that kind of thing, which it's a whole different view.
Yeah, I think that specific example kind of depends on what kind of job you're at. But for like a normal 9 to 5, I think it's good especially if you're working from home, if you take like an hour lunch break,
Yeah.
and have time to relax and then come back to work. And I think that's the kind of flexibility that we're looking for.
Yeah, and that applies to an office environment. What do you do if you're construction and you're building a building and you can't do that from
Yeah,
home?
you can't really do that.
No, so flexibility is kind of a different deal depending on where you are, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned that you're a later millennial, and so in some ways you're kind of more similar to an early Z. Do you see, so how are the earliest millennials, so going back to the earliest millennials were born in 1981, how do those folks differ within your generation from the later millennials?
Yeah, so I think, like I mentioned, it's more how we understand how social media works. Again, it's the pressure that social media has on us is, I think the older millennials think of it in a different way. So for younger millennials, we see it as, everything you put out into the world is there forever. And I think we kind of see it as kind of like a brand. I think our social media is branding ourselves. And, we carefully choose and pick what we want to post and, how that portrays us, whether it's to our friends or even to jobs. And I don't think older millennials kind of had that experience of how much pressure is put on social media in general.
Yeah, it's interesting because, the personal computer was really born in the middle of this generation, the millennial generation. I mean, it was born after World War II in labs and all of that. But I mean, in terms of, households really adopting it as a household appliance, and businesses really bringing it in and using it, kind of happened in the middle. So, I think people characterize millennials as being, the tech generation, but it does depend on, you're talking about in terms of social media, but it depends on, which part of the generation you started in, I guess.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Really interesting. When, talk about the events, and I'm thinking about, historical events, global events. What are some of the events that have happened during the millennial generation?
I can think of a few. So the first one that comes to mind is COVID-19. I'm not sure like how COVID will be remembered in the future, but I know for people who've experienced it, it's very top of mind. Another would be same-sex marriage, and also the election of our first Black president, Barack Obama. I remember I was 13 years old when Barack Obama was elected, and I think it was a school night. I was sleeping, and I know my mom came and woke me up, and she's like, Obama won. And I'm like, okay, that's great. Yay. I just went back to sleep. But, growing up, I was taught that as an African-American girl, woman, no matter what career path I chose, no matter where I went in life, I have to work a little bit harder. So I knew that when Obama was elected, it was a big deal. But as I got older, I could understand how important that was. So I think that's definitely one of the most memorable for me, for my generation.
Yeah, and for just about everybody of any generation, it was really a transformational event. And we've heard from some of the other generations that the transitions or the progress in social areas that have happened during their generations, and it is interesting when you talk about it that the progress that has been made. I know sometimes when you look forward, you say, "Oh, we have so much to go," right? But a lot has been made. Yeah, and that's happened really during your generation in terms of really, the widespread adoption, right?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. Any other events that in your generation that you think stand out?
Definitely 9/11 as well. I was really young when that happened because I'm on the later side of the millennials, but I know for a lot of millennials in general, 9/11 was a huge part of their lives as well.
Yeah. When people look back 100 years from now, of course, and I'm trying to just take it out far enough so that there's some perspective. What do you think they will say about your generation?
Well, Steve, I think they're going to say, we're the greatest generation in the world. Millennials, they did it.
Good for you.
They were the best.
They were the best. They were the best. Well, but they might name themselves the greatest generation, right? Or
They would be very wrong.
very good. Yeah. Any other characters? How are they going to generalize and characterize the millennials, do you think?
I think definitely the technology and the internet will be a huge part of how they remember millennials. I think there's a lot of pressure on millennials right now to solve a lot of the issues in the world, like climate change and, maybe they'll remember COVID-19. Hopefully we can do something in the future that'll help them remember us in a positive way.
And what would that look like?
Fixing climate change.
Yeah.
I think a lot about gun control. I think that's important.
Yeah. Any other thoughts as it relates either to the millennials or, the other generations that we haven't talked about?
I think I love that we're doing the generations episodes because it's really nice to hear all the different, experiences from the different generations and how we're different and how we're the same. And I think going forward, we can all kind of learn from each other so that we can improve not only ourselves, but the world. And of course, technology will keep evolving and we'll have to adapt to that. But hopefully we can learn from each generation and kind of come together as one.
As long as we're willing to share and listen, huh?
Exactly. And we're going to start with CEO perspectives.
There we go. Alex Keaton, late millennial. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me, Steve.
And thanks to all of you for listening into CEO Perspectives. Every week, I'll be joined by a prominent thought leader to provide insights on the issues of our time. We'll cover the leading topics in geopolitics, economics, public policy, and more. Please share CEO Perspectives with your colleagues, with your friends, with your family, with every generation. I know they're going to want to listen. I'm Steve Odland, and this series has been brought to you by the Conference Board.
You have been listening to CEO Perspectives, a podcast by the Conference Board.